Hey guys, I've been following Dr. Valter Longo's longevity diet for 8 weeks. I'm going to give you my thoughts and show you some of the meals that I made. For those of you not familiar with the diet, here's a super quick overview. It's similar to the Mediterranean diet, but no red or white meat, occasional fish, but it's mainly a plant-based diet with a low overall protein intake. He also advocates time-restricted eating, meaning from your first bite of food in the morning to the last bit in the evening should be 11 to 12 hours, if not less. I think the best way to review this diet is to go through a list of pros and cons, and we'll start with the pros. Firstly, the diet encourages a heavy intake of vegetables and a low to moderate intake of fruit. I was adding 2 to 3 portions of vegetables at lunch and dinner, and I was having a piece of fruit with breakfast. I think most people would agree that for general health, a high intake of vegetables is preferable, so a big fat tick in that column. There's lots of legumes too, and that contributed to a fibre intake that surpassed my daily requirements. Fibre is something that a lot of people struggle to get enough of, but that is not going to be a problem on this diet. A single can of kidney, cannellini beans, something like that, is going to have 15 grams of fibre in it. Add to that your morning porridge and you're at 23 grams of the day without touching a vegetable, and doctors recommend 30 grams a day for general health. Next is the liberal use of extra virgin olive oil. I was adding 2 or 3 tablespoons at lunch and dinner, getting through a bottle every 2 or 3 weeks. If you've read Genius Foods, then you'll know that extra virgin olive oil helps with inflammation as well as brain function. Once I figured out the kind of template for lunch and dinner, then it was easy enough to create meals that were suitable. After 8 weeks, my breakfast ended up as 90 grams of oats with a banana and honey, and then lunch was a portion of grains, lots of veg, fish a few times a week, and healthy fats. Dinner was the same, and then one of the 2 meals would have legumes as well. On top of that, a daily snack of nuts and dark chocolate was also encouraged. On the subject of nuts, snacking on plain unsalted nuts is a bit of a chore for me, so the introduction of chocolate meant a snack I could look forward to that was still delivering health benefits. The next benefit is that I lost weight. That's not a pro for me because I was already at my goal weight, but for a lot of people out there, they would be happy with the weight loss. I was actively eating as much as I could, but due to the sheer volume of the food, I still lost 3 pounds over the 8 weeks. The diet itself wasn't that restrictive. Despite being mainly plant-based, you are allowed fish several times a week, as well as low levels of dairy, so when eating out with friends, I didn't feel like I was limited in my menu choices. I think the sign of a good diet is that it feels natural to you, and you don't actually feel like you're on a diet. I didn't have any cravings for junk food either, and I think that's important. A good diet is like a good relationship. You shouldn't be constantly thinking about cheating. I see a lot of diets that offer a cheat meal or a cheat day where you can eat whatever you like once a week. To me, that's encouraging binge eating, and it's also showing that the diet itself is too restrictive. Speaking of restrictions, the time-restricted eating has known health benefits, and for me it really cut down on late-night snacking. It's based on research by Dr. Sachin Panda and is related to the whole fasting movement. The first few days are quite hard. If you've ever fasted for a blood test, you'll know the feeling. But after about a week, it feels like it really does keep your hunger levels under control. Here's a histogram of my feeding window across the 8 weeks. You can see most days it was 10 hours or less. If I draw a line for 12 hours and under, you can see it was most days. I did struggle when I had a late shift at work. If dinner was 6 p.m, I'd need to eat again before the 2 a.m. finish. So those are the pros, and to be honest, if I can allow myself a bit more freedom, then I plan to bring a lot of the concepts from this diet back into my regular eating. I'll definitely include more legumes and vegetables in my meals because they tasted much nicer. I also like the extra virgin oil, nuts and seeds for fat content. Felt much healthier than just adding a dollop of peanut butter to my protein shakes. As someone who used to obsess over getting lots of protein, right now I don't feel like I need to go back to eating chicken breast on a daily basis. Now, the diet might sound great, but it did have some flaws, so here are some of the negatives. Number 1, not enough protein. Now, this is called the longevity diet, not the optimal performance diet, so he isn't trying to maximize lean muscle and physique. If you take me, 71 kilos, my upper limit for the day was meant to be 56 grams of protein. If you compare that to what I was on before, which was 140 grams, it's less than half. You are allowed an extra 25 to 30 grams of protein after resistance exercise, but I could still tell that my body wasn't recovering as fast as it usually does on my regular diet. I felt like I would just get up to 70% recovered and then just kind of plateau. And I think that was part of the reason why I got shoulder and back injuries in around week 5 and 6 from lifting in the gym. I don't need to go back to my 140 grams a day, but on this diet I was averaging 80 grams a day, and maybe I'd like to push it back up to 110 going forward. Secondly, the fibre. At first, the huge increase in vegetables and fibre was a shock to my system, and it had, let's call it, noticeable effects. Like Saturn and Jupiter, I was a gas giant. It's a perfectly natural process. The high fibre ferments in the large intestine. Bacteria in our gut eat the complex carbohydrates like the legumes and produce gas. That lasted for 3 weeks. I did identify which vegetables had the worst effect on me and limited those, but we have to put it in the negative column because I was feeling bloated and uncomfortable for those 3 weeks, even though long term it was perfectly fine. The weight loss, again, it's a pro for most people, but I was already at my goal weight, possibly even wanted to add muscle mass. And it's surprisingly difficult to eat 2,500 calories of healthy food due to the sheer volume of it. Some of my meals were twice the size of what I normally eat for the same number of calories, so all that extra food is pushing against my stomach, so I'm feeling physically full but needing to eat more. For those of you not eating as much as me, you could still struggle with hunger. While the portion sizes mean that your stomachs are full, you can still feel hungry for the first few weeks. Although fibre is going to keep you fuller for longer, out of protein, carbohydrate and fat in a normal diet, you'll find that protein keeps you feeling the most full, and that's the one that's intentionally low in this diet. Finally, lack of vitamins, mainly B12. B12 is a big one for vegans because the main sources are animal meats. You'll find that nutritional yeast is supposedly a good source. I'll have to look that up. But some people argue that if you have to supplement to avoid deficiencies, that it's not an optimal diet for a human. You'll also find that Dr. Longo recommends having multivitamins every other day, which is another sign that otherwise you might be deficient. Moving on to recipes, and I'll fly through these. In part 1, I talked you through the options for breakfast and snacks. Here I'm going to cover the lunches and dinners, which are pretty interchangeable. The main template is that moderate portion of grains, lots of vegetables, fish 3 times a week, legumes in either lunch or dinner, and some healthy fats. I'm not much of a chef, and you could certainly jazz up these meals with more herbs and spices if you like. My go-to for a bland meal is always just to add hot sauce. So these will be in no particular order. I just want to show you some of the meals that I was eating on this diet. So this was the first time my fiance has ever thought my food was appetizing, and I did 2 portions of this. It was a salad of spinach and tomatoes, crumbled up crisp bread with feta cheese and pine nuts, drizzled in olive oil. Moving on, pita breads with kidney beans, tomato passata, spinach and pepper. Next up, pita bread, cannellini beans, rice, tomato and mushrooms. Cannellini beans again with white rice, tuna, tomatoes and onion. Feta cheese and tomato on crisp breads. This was amazing and I had it a few times, with a spinach and pepper side salad, and again with focaccia and olive oil. Spaghetti with tuna, parmesan, tomato and courgette. A few variations of quinoa and lentils. Those 2 went very well together. Sag paneer, it's a spinach based curry. Paneer is cheese. It's really nice despite how it looks. Sweet potato, either with lentils, kidney beans or chickpeas. Then a few lazier options. The left side is a veggie pizza, right side is spinach and ricotta. Finally, veggie pizza, again with fish fingers. I'm pretty sure the centenarians in Southern Europe aren't living on fish fingers, but it was a good option when there was nothing else left in the house. As I say, I can do some basic prep, but someone with more skill in the kitchen could make some amazing dishes. It's certainly not restrictive. Although I stuck to mackerel most of the time, you can have other fish. Stick by the acronym SMASH for the best fish, that is salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines and herring. Overall, it's been very eye-opening. I was quite reliant on things like chicken, peanut butter, eggs, and it's quite nice to see that I could eat quinoa and kidney beans and still get 35 grams of protein. The protein level did feel restrictive, and if you're an active person, you'll probably notice the difference if you stick to his recommended targets. If you want to know more about the diet, I've written a few articles, but you can also just go out and buy the book. Cheers.